Story 1. The Babysitting Job. I was 19 the summer this happened, working part-time as a nanny to save up for my second year of college. I found the job through a flyer at my local coffee shop, a family looking for someone to watch their 8-year-old daughter, Ellie, 3 nights a week, while both parents worked late shifts at the hospital. The pay was good, the house was nice, and Ellie was a sweet, quiet kid who mostly just wanted someone to play board games with. For the first month, nothing unusual happened at all. It was the start of the second month when things started to feel off. Ellie's parents had a rule that I thought was strange at the time but didn't question. The door to the basement had to stay locked, and I was never given a key. When I asked why, Ellie's mom just laughed it off and said her husband kept his tools and some old equipment down there, and it wasn't child-proofed. Fair enough, I thought. Lots of parents have off-limits rooms. About 5 weeks into the job, Ellie started acting strange during our evenings together. She'd go quiet in the middle of playing and just stare down the hallway toward the basement door. I asked her once what she was looking at, and she said very matter-of-factly that she was waiting to see if the door would open by itself again. I laughed it off, assuming she meant a draft or a loose latch. She didn't laugh with me. She just said, "It only opens when you're not looking at it." I chalked it up to a kid's imagination. Kids say weird things. But that same night, while Ellie was brushing her teeth, I heard a soft click from down the hall. I walked over and the basement door, which I had personally checked was locked at the start of my shift, was open about 2 inches. I remember standing there for a solid 10 seconds, convincing myself I'd misremembered locking it. I closed it, checked the handle, and it was locked again, somehow. I didn't tell Ellie's parents. It felt embarrassing to bring up, like I'd sound paranoid over nothing. But over the following 2 weeks, it kept happening. Always at night, always when Ellie and I were the only ones home, and always that same soft click, followed by the door sitting open a couple of inches, like something on the other side had nudged it, rather than opened it all the way. The night everything changed. Ellie had already gone to bed around 9, and I was on the couch doing homework, with the TV low in the background. Around 11, I heard the click. I didn't get up right away this time. I just sat there listening. A few minutes later, I heard something that made my stomach drop. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming up the basement stairs. Not fast, not sneaking, just steady, even steps, like someone climbing stairs they'd climbed 1,000 times before. I grabbed my phone and quietly went to check on Ellie first. She was fast asleep, door shut, nothing out of place. When I came back to the hallway, the basement door was wide open, and the light down there, a light I had never once seen turned on, was on. I stood at the top of the stairs and called down, asking if anyone was there, feeling ridiculous even as I did it. No answer. Just the hum of what sounded like an old refrigerator or freezer running somewhere below. I didn't go down. I called Ellie's dad instead, and he picked up sounding immediately alarmed, which told me this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. He told me to get Ellie, lock ourselves in her room, and that he was already in the car. He arrived in under 10 minutes, and by the time he got there, the basement door was closed again, and the light was off. He never fully explained it to me, but he did tell me one thing before I left that night, visibly shaken himself. The family who lived in the house before them had also had a young daughter, and that daughter had gone missing from the house nearly 15 years earlier. The case was never solved. He said he only found this out after they'd already moved in and it was too late to back out of the sale. He said sometimes late at night, he swore he could hear a child's voice down there, different from Ellie's, calling out a name that wasn't hers. I quit 2 days later. I never asked what was actually in that basement, and honestly, I still don't want to know. Ellie's family moved out of that house about 8 months after I stopped working for them. I don't know where they went, and I never followed up. Story 2. The Rideshare. I used to drive for a rideshare app on weekend nights to make extra cash during grad school. Most of the rides were exactly what you'd expect. Drunk college kids, people leaving bars, the occasional awkward first date gone wrong. This story is about the one ride that made me delete the app entirely and never drive again. It was around 2:40 in the morning on a Saturday, dead quiet on the roads, when I got a ride request from an address way out past the edge of town, almost in the middle of nowhere. Normally I'd skip a pickup that far out this late, but the fare estimate was unusually high, so I figured why not. I remember thinking that was strange even then, a fare that high for what should have been a 15-minute drive back into town. When I pulled up to the address, it wasn't a house. It was an empty gravel lot next to a stretch of woods. No streetlights, no other cars. I sat there for a minute, assuming the app had glitched or the pin was off. Then my passenger door opened on its own, and a woman got in without me unlocking it, which I know sounds like something wrong with my memory of the night, but I've replayed it 100 times, and I'm certain the locks were engaged. She didn't say anything at first. I asked to confirm her name for the ride, standard procedure, and she just said, very softly, "Just drive, please." Something about her voice made me not want to argue. She gave no destination beyond keep going straight, so I just kept driving down the same road, waiting for further directions that never came. About 10 minutes in, I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She'd moved to the back seat at some point, though I never heard her do it, and she was staring directly at me instead of out the window. Her eyes didn't track normally. It was less like she was looking at me, and more like she was looking through me. I asked again where she needed to go, trying to keep my voice steady, and she said, "You already know the way." I didn't know the way. I had no idea where I was going, but I kept driving anyway, because some part of my brain had decided that stopping the car felt more dangerous than continuing. Eventually the road opened up into a small overlook I didn't even know existed, despite having lived in that area my whole life. I stopped the car because the road physically ended there. She said, "This is fine," got out, and started walking toward the edge of the overlook, into complete darkness. I sat frozen for a second, then did the responsible thing and called out asking if she was okay, if she needed help. She didn't answer. I got my phone out to turn on the flashlight and follow her, and by the time I looked back up, she was simply gone, not walking away in the distance. Gone. There was nowhere she could have gone that fast. The overlook had a guardrail and a drop beyond it, and no side paths I could see. I checked my app for the ride details afterward, shaking, trying to at least rate the passenger or report the incident. The ride had no record, no pickup address, no fare, no passenger name. It was like the request had never existed, despite the fact that I had physically picked someone up and driven for nearly 20 minutes. I looked into the overlook location the next day out of morbid curiosity and found out through a local history page that it used to be a lookout point notorious decades ago for a string of disappearances before the road leading to it was mostly closed off and forgotten. I never drove for that app again. I still don't know what I picked up that night, and I've genuinely stopped trying to find an explanation that makes me feel better about it. Story 3. The Neighbor's Christmas Lights. This one happened at my childhood home, the house I grew up in from age 6 until I left for college. Every December, our next-door neighbor, an older widower named Mr. Halloway, put up an enormous, elaborate Christmas light display, the kind people drove from other neighborhoods just to see. It had been a tradition of his for as long as I could remember, and as a kid, I loved it. My parents always said Mr. Halloway did it in memory of his wife, who had passed years before we moved in, because she'd loved Christmas more than anyone. The year I turned 12, Mr. Halloway passed away quietly in his sleep, sometime in early November. The house sat empty through the holidays that year, dark for the first time in over a decade, and the whole street felt strange without it. My parents mentioned more than once how much they missed seeing those lights glowing every night when they got home from work. The following December, almost exactly a year after he died, I woke up around 1 a.m. to a soft glow coming through my bedroom curtains. I assumed it was just a passing car, but the light didn't move and didn't fade. When I looked outside, Mr. Halloway's house, still empty, still for sale, still completely dark every other night that entire year, was lit up exactly like it used to be. Every string of lights, every lawn ornament, all perfectly arranged in the exact patterns he used to set up himself. I got my parents, and both of them came to the window and just stood there in silence for a long moment. My dad eventually said quietly that it looked exactly right, down to the placement of the reindeer figures on the left side of the yard, a detail he said he hadn't even consciously remembered until seeing it again. Nobody had a key to that house. Nobody had touched that yard in over a year, based on how overgrown it had become. We didn't call anyone that night. I don't fully know why. I think some part of all three of us didn't want to disturb whatever was happening, like it wasn't a threat, so much as something private that didn't belong to us to interrupt. The lights stayed on until almost 4 in the morning, then went dark all at once, rather than gradually, the way they used to when Mr. Holloway would flip the breaker switch by hand at the end of the night. In the morning, my dad walked over to check, mostly out of disbelief. He said the extension cords were coiled up neatly in the garage, exactly like Mr. Holloway used to leave them, despite nobody having been inside that garage all year that anyone knew of. There was no sign the lights had ever been out, aside from the fact that the house was still empty and for sale. This happened every December, for the 4 years we lived in that house afterward. Always for a single night, always around the same date in early December, and always shutting off around 4 a.m. Nobody in the neighborhood ever called the police or the real estate agent about it, as far as I know. It became this quiet, unspoken thing everyone on the street just accepted and never discussed in daylight. We moved away when I was 16, and I never found out if it kept happening after that. Every December now, when I see the first Christmas lights go up in my own neighborhood, I think about that empty house, glowing in the dark, and some small part of me hopes that wherever Mr. Holloway ended up, he still gets to put on his show for someone.